Hey, welcome everybody to Champions Within. We're here tonight, and our intention was to talk about Christianity and racism, and we do want to talk about that at some point. But some of our guest speakers, one, Carl Pennington, couldn't be with us tonight, and the other two, we're not sure if they're going to be able to join us tonight or not. And so, rather than jumping right into that topic, we thought we'd talk about something else. And then if they jump on, we'll switch gears and we'll go to that. But I think it's important. What we're going to talk about actually deals with racism as well, and that is evil and evil that's in our world and evil that's in our heart sometimes. And I think the first thing that I think of is I think about Genesis chapter 3, and I think about when sin came into the world, when Adam and Eve were in the garden and everything was great, and they were told by the serpent, by the enemy, they were told that they could be like God if they would just they didn't. God had told them, don't eat of these trees. Don't eat of this one tree, the knowledge of good and evil. You can eat of all these other trees, including the tree of life. And the enemy said, no, that's not true. He said, if you do this, you can be like God. And man was tempted with what I think is the ultimate evil, and that is thinking that we can be like God.
Mm.
And so when that really is probably the root of all of our sin, is wanting to be the God of our own life. So just, man, cold turkey here, just throwing this out at you guys. But when you think of sin, and when you think of wanting to be in charge of your own life, how do you think that plays out in your life or in other people's lives when we're struggling with sin and evil?
Mm. Yeah, that's good. I think just the idea of selfishness, I think that's really like you said, at the root of it. And I think about marriage, especially, being a newlywed, and I think about the times when my wife and I are not getting along. And to be completely honest, I think I look at myself and I look at where my heart's at in those times, and most of the time it's because I'm being extremely selfish. I'm thinking about myself, wanting to get my way, instead of serving and loving, and caring about my wife the way that I care about myself, which is ultimately what God commands us to do and asks us to do, right? Is to love
Mm-hmm.
one another like we love ourselves. But for whatever reason, we know because of sin, but it's really difficult, because we are so locked in on ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. What what happens, Jim, on a team that you're coaching if the players decide that they want to do your job as the coach? They're supposed to go out and play, but they don't, or maybe it's parents too, but
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the but
it's,
yeah. But what happens if the players show up and they want to be the coach too?
yeah. That makes it difficult because now you're going to have a lot of difference of opinions.
Yeah.
And so you lose the direction that you want to take the team on. So when they come in with trying to do your job and then do their job, they're not going to do a good job on their own job because they're worried about your job. So
Yep.
it causes havoc.
Right.
Yeah.
And can you see then how that's how we are with God? I mean, if he's the coach, and we're trying to figure out. I mean, I just see it every day. I feel like, and I've been in ministry for over 30 years, and I see it all the time where people keep wanting to redefine what's good and what's evil.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, you make a good point right there. And at times, in my life, I'm always trying to like tell God, like, I want to do this. This is good.
Yeah.
I'm pushing
Yeah.
the line, but this is good. I know it's good, and you're gonna forgive me anyways. So, I'm gonna do this and thinking that I can get away with that, and that's not good for me. It's not good.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see, maybe more evil in this time that we're in right now, with the enemy wanting to divide us, especially the church, of really blurring those lines and trying to convince us that we shouldn't be going back to the word to really define what those things are, the things that we need to be holding fast to be true. I think it's one of the worst things happening right now, right? In and out of the church is this idea that that essentially there is no one higher power who has created all of us for a purpose, and who has revealed his word to us, and that we're doing the world a disservice and not loving people by committing and really trusting in his word that he's given us, when really in this time, I think we need to be doing the opposite of just not listening to ourselves so much, but really going back to the word of God, and just seeing and asking where he's at with these things, and just really committing to truth. I think the enemy is doing a good job right now of pulling us away from that, and that to me is just pure evil.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this interesting thing I learned. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I learned it listening to some guys talk about it. But that phrase from Genesis chapter 3, good and evil, in Hebrew it's tov and ra, and tov means good, things that are good. But ra really doesn't mean, evil is too strong of a word for what ra means, because, and I think it's easy for us to say, well, I'm not evil. It's kind of what you were talking about, Jay. I mean, we look at things and we kind of like, the enemy is deceiving us into believing, well, that's not evil. That's not horrible. But what the word actually means, kind of trying to remember what I listened to the podcast I was listening to, what the word actually means is that it's something that can lead to evil in your life. So it may not in and of itself be this horrible thing. So it's easy then for us to say, well, that's not that bad. But it actually can destroy our lives,
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's several things we can think of like that in and of themselves, they're not evil. So what do? We just keep redefining by saying, well, is that really that bad? And it's like, well, maybe by itself, it's not that bad. But then we allow ourselves, and as a society, to go down those paths.
Yeah.
Where then we look up and it's like it's become evil in our lives. And I think, I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys, but I mean.
No, totally.
It says in Isaiah, doesn't it say in Isaiah that they'll call evil good and good evil?
Yeah, I think it's Isaiah 5.
Yeah, Isaiah 5:20, darkness for light and light for darkness, bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. So I think that's absolutely where we're headed right now. I mean,
yeah. Oh, I don't know if we're headed. I think we're there.
Well, yeah.
It's no.
It's going to get worse, I'm sure.
Well, it is, and I think we as Christians, I mean, I want to be careful how I say this, but I think we probably handled it the wrong way, because once again, we've taken something and we've alienated people by the way that we've tried to communicate it to them. Speaking the truth in love is what Paul talks about, and learning to talk about things that are good and things that are bad or that are evil. It's because we're concerned for people. I always used to use this illustration when people would talk about tolerance, and John Burke in his book, No Perfect People Allowed, says that tolerance is the world's cheap imitation of grace. And, tolerance just says, I tolerate you. It says that I don't have to care about you to show you tolerance. And so I always say, if you saw me standing in the middle of the road and a truck was bearing down on me, and you're like, you know what? You have a right to live in the street. It's okay if you want to live in the street. Is that showing any concern for me? Or are you going to stand there at the side of the road and scream, or even run out on the road and try to save me from that truck
Mm-hmm.
that's coming? And I think we have, as Christians, we've done two things I think that are mistakes. One is we've come at people really, really hard, not in love, who just sin differently than we do. And I think that we have, we've just we've sat back and allowed the world to define what is good and what is bad. And I don't know. I think we're reaping the benefits, or we're reaping the crop of those seeds that we planted.
So we talk about that, Nate, and you're saying, okay, so as Christians, okay, we are responsible to sharing the gospel, and we're responsible to help those in need. And so when we're seeing like what's happening now, with what's going on in our different cities, and we had those incidents happen, like that the police officer, when he killed that gentleman,
George Floyd.
I mean, that's straight out evil.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay. So, but as Christians, how do we get to tell our Black Christian brothers and sisters that God is in control, God is going to help. We can't lose sight of that and allow ourselves to keep going the path that the evil one wants us to go to and keep us divided.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I shared this a little bit last week when we were talking about loving people and loving our neighbor and loving our enemies. It's like it has to come from something that's changed inside of me for it to be real. I heard a guy this week on, and I won't mention any names, but there's a story going around here in Oklahoma about a coach, and he apologized for some things that he did, and as he was apologizing, he said some really good things, that I was wrong, and he began to say these things. Well, I heard a guy on the radio station say, he goes, he's saying all the right things. I don't care what's in his heart. I don't care what's in his heart. He's saying all the right things. And I cringed when I heard that, because I was just like, well, if it's not coming from inside of his heart, it's not going to last. He's going to say all the right things today, and tomorrow, what's going to happen? I mean, we react, I think, out of the default settings of our heart, So, so Jim, my answer to your question is that it has to come from a life that's been transformed by the gospel. It has to come from a life that's been transformed by the work of Jesus and what he's done in my heart, for it to really have, I believe, lasting change. It's like I shared a few weeks ago in marriage. If you don't have a heart change, eventually you won't treat your wife right. If it's got to come from something that's transformed in you for it to be real and for it to be lasting.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
Yes. Okay. Martel, I just see him that he's just getting on, right? And
Yes.
He's our guest, one of our guest panelists today. But let me give you a quick story about Martel. Martel Bland is the Senior Director of Sales for Microsoft Enterprise Services Sales. And he graduated from St. Mary's University up in Moraga, California. And he was a 4-year starter for the basketball team up in St. Mary's. He got his degree in political science. And he's on board with us today. So welcome, Martel.
Hi.
And,
I appreciate you inviting me, Jim.
There's no problem. So Nate, clue us in. Let's get Martel going.
all right. So Martel, we want to know, I mean, as a pastor, I've heard a lot of people saying the church needs to do something about racism and about things that are going on in our culture and the division that we have. And I totally agree with that. The last thing I want to do is stand here and tell these people what we as Christians need to do. So we'd love to hear perspective
Yeah.
from someone who's a follower of Christ. What's the Christian's response to racism? What should we be doing?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's multifaceted. I think fundamentally, I get really concerned when people put big issues on a person or a specific church. I think that's why we see people with deep pockets like a Microsoft and like a lot of other companies who, have responded with commercials and a ton of money that they're throwing at things to demonstrate or have the perception that they really are going to, at a ground roots level, do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think just foundationally, I sort of cringe at that because I think the issue that we have, quite frankly, it resides within each person and their immediate fears of influence. People you associate with, hang out with, talk to, go to parties with, sit and have barbecues at their house. That's your fierce of influence. And I think the church, as a population of members, should take a lot of pride and responsibility in helping educate their members, educating them on just the things that maybe they've never seen before. I'll give you a great example. We were asked, well, really, my wife was asked to, for us as a family, to attend a church town hall, if you will, where they wanted to essentially ask us as one of the Black families that had attended their church or visited their church before all these questions. I mean, these questions were any and everything you can think of. And, I said to her, I said, you sure you want to do that? She said, I think we're called to do it because our experience will shed light and we will do it from a place of being God-centered. So I'm pretty sure it'll work out fine. There were 60 male and female, white male and female people. They, they had their lawn chairs. They gave us a mic and we just said, listen, ask any question you want. And, to fast forward to the end, I mean, more than half of the people were standing in line to talk to us afterwards. And they just said, the love that you demonstrated in your answers speaks to how you treat people. And I said, and to most of them, I said, that's what it's about. God gives us very clear direction on how we should love other people, treat others as we want to be treated. He gives us clarity on, the concepts of specifically Beatitudes and all the things that are there. And it's really up to us to not only have it in our heart, but demonstrate that to other people in a kind way. And I think, so to answer your question in kind of a roundabout way, I believe that the church is situated with members that, from the head leader, the pastor, yourself possibly, down to your newest member, should be a group of individuals that demonstrate the love and the care and the responsibility and just the awareness of what's happening in society. I feel too many churches shun things away and push things off and really try to say, hey, we're not going to get involved. And I just respected this particular church. I talked to the pastor and I said, are these most of your members? He's like, yeah. He's like, we got about 100 members total. And I think these are all the men and women at our church. And I'm like, wow, I just commend you for encouraging them to come. And they wrote out anonymous questions. We put it in a barrel and I just picked through it. And some questions I gave to my wife and some I gave to my kids. And we just answered all the questions and to the best of our ability. we even, once we answered all the questions, we said, are there other questions? We'll send the bin around again. And we got another 10 or 15 questions. Um, and you can tell there were additive questions from something maybe we didn't specifically. Like one question was, so do you agree or disagree with having police or police reform? And it's a fair question. And maybe I didn't answer the first time, but I'm a big supporter of having a police. I think it'd be crazy, craziness in the world without them. I said, but we ask our police officers to do too much. We have a snake in our backyard. We call 911. The police officer shows up. We know someone's on some kind of medication. They're just very loopy, or they need psychiatric help. We ask our police officers to respond to that and determine, what are they dealing with. So I think we need to figure out what we want our police officers to strategically and specifically do. And anyway, so that was an answer to one of the questions. But we got all the questions you can ever in your mind think about. Everything. Why do Black lives matter? All lives matter, don't they? Do you agree or disagree? Everything under the sun, and we answered all of them, and we just did it from a place of love, from a place of uniting us all together, from a place of me not pointing to you and saying you're better than me. None of those things existed in our conversation, and I think we need to do more of that, both in the church and out of the church.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that I've thought about throughout all of this is and it goes along with the sports world as well, and that's the kneeling and the anthem and things like that. And I remember when all that was happening with a few years ago, and I remember how I felt about it, because I was listening to voices that were saying, well, that's being disrespectful or unpatriotic. And now this time around, as I'm looking at it, and I know there's been a change in the way people see it now. I know some still, struggle with it. And I think about, all the things that happened with Drew Brees and, all the things over the last few weeks that have happened. And, and I think if there's a question here, it's like, is there a way for us to get to this place where we can disagree with someone without being thrown all the way into this other label? And that if it's offensive to someone, now you were talking about how as a church, we're supposed to love other people. And even if in my heart, I don't agree with it, can I somehow learn to understand why someone's doing something that I don't agree with, and not necessarily cancel them out of my, well, we just got to get rid of them because, does that make sense? I don't know.
It makes 100% sense. And I think the reality of that is it's having more open dialogues, maybe potentially like this or larger, but more consistently. It was probably someone in their 20s, and they said, at this point, we were so transparent and so direct that people were coming up to us, sharing just stuff, and I'm like, wow, I'm glad you're so honest and direct. This one 20-year-old, he just said, I just look at the things on TV and I think it has captured my imagination that most Black people are that way. He's like, I'm just, so listen to you talk. I know there are educated Black people out there, but I'm almost in my mind decided that that's not true almost. And I feel almost like disgusted that I know that's not true, but.
Uh-oh. We lost him.
Did it freeze up?
Yep.
Oh, no.
Froze up on us. Well, hopefully we'll get him back here in a second. What do you guys think about that? We've all been in a situation where, because of something that we've said or something that we've done, people put us into a group or label us a certain way. And I know whether it's a race thing or whether it's a political thing or whatever it is, we have this tendency to group people up and put them in this category. almost unfair. I mean, not almost, unfairly. And I don't know. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Ever felt that?
you make a good point there, and I'm going to go to back in '68 on the Summer Olympic Games,
Mhm.
and we had those two, Tommy Smith and John Carlos. I just won the gold medal and the bronze medal in the, let me see, I believe it was the 400-meter run, I believe. And back then we had all the.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
We
Can you
had
hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. I had to I pulled over and put my phone so I can see you guys, and the phone overheated. So
Oh,
I had to
no.
turn the
no.
AC. I had to turn the AC on to cool it off really quickly. And I'm gonna keep it out of the sun this time
Oh,
around.
that's
Sorry,
funny.
sorry, Jim. You were talking.
You just did that.
So I'll hold it over here. Out of the
That's
sun.
good.
Sorry.
Anyways,
That's
what was the question you just asked, Nate? Remember?
Well, we're just talking about that we've all experienced this unfair treatment of, because of something we've said or done,
Yeah.
people take us and put us into a category or a group, you know.
Yeah.
And Jim was talking about the 1968 Olympics.
With John Carlos
Yeah.
and Tommy Smith, and they got
Yeah.
up to get their award, and they went fist up, and
Yeah.
they were protesting, and people, and people just, they just went crazy because
Yeah.
they did that just for the flag. But the reason why was because the social injustice that was occurring at that time in that period.
That's right.
We had those riots and everything, and all the bad things that were occurring, and they was just trying to bring attention to that, because we've had enough. We reached a boiling point, and so they did that. But man, they got it was they, just like you said, attacked. It was wrong, and you this and that, instead of as if we're Christians, is what's the problem? What's going on here? What's the,
Right.
how can we help? But but we didn't look like that. We went right to attack mode.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was just bringing it up as a reference.
But I will say that, and maybe I'm just a glass half full optimistic person, but I think the percentage of people that exist in the world the way they were in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s are very much down to single digit percentages. And that could just be me being super naive, but I think there's a few bad apples all the time and everywhere you go. And unfortunately, those bad apples are the ones that are put up on the screen for whatever the circumstances are. But I think part of it is a lack of awareness, a lack of talking through things, a lack of here's two things. So one is giving people the benefit of the doubt, right? When I walk in, and I was just telling this story to the same group, they were asking, why do some Black people feel like we have white privilege? I said, well, you got to understand, like, as a fundamental thing, to me, that's not negative. I have American privilege because I've gone to Haiti and I see what they live like in Haiti. I have American privilege.
Yeah.
You have white privilege only because when you walk into a store, you're given the benefit of the doubt. When I walk in the store, depending on what I'm wearing that day, I could be perceived like I was when I bought my wife's ring. I told myself, I'm buying one ring. It's probably going to be 5 carats or more. I'm pushing all the money I got at that time. And I'm buying one. But what I didn't realize is, I walk in places when I'm not working with T-shirts and a hat on and shorts on, and I go buy cars or big expensive items, and I just didn't think that. And when I went to the lady, she says, "You want to look at those two? Sorry, let me come over here with me. Let me show you something that's a little bit more in your price range." And I said, "What?" And my point is that why is that her perception of me? She knows nothing about me other than me walking up and saying, "I'm interested in this ring." It's just the privilege of potentially that not happening to you, right?
Mm.
That's all. I was trying to explain to these people that were sitting there. That's all privilege is because of what you look like and someone's immediate perception of what they see. They make opinions about you that carry for one race versus another. People have told me in Europe or in Japan, you're American. I'm like, yeah. They don't say you're a Black American. You're an American. Therefore, we raise you up at a higher level depending on the country I've been in. So I think people look at certain things with such a negative connotation. Even as we were saying before, the kneeling and stuff like that. I've always looked at that and said, well, we allow people to have freedom of speech and freedom of expression, but we're going to hold people accountable when they do it in certain magnitude, like certain environments that like, it just didn't make sense. Like if that's a person's choice. Now, if you're going to get fined by the NBA or the NFL, that's one thing. If NFL rules say, as a player in this organization, you have to stand up. If you don't, then we're going to fine you. Then, okay, I then will have the responsibility of being fined. It's just like for your 15th technical, whatever it is in NBA, we're going to take $20,000 from you. That's my choice if I make that choice to get another technical. So I look at it more like that than this big uproar of, even, if I've seen the KKK, I'm like, they have the freedom to do that. I don't like necessarily what I hear that they stand for, but that's their freedom to do that. Why are people so, bent out of shape? But it should apply across the board. No one should have this rule against them that as an organization, agency, or person, you can't do what the laws say in this country. But then we get into the fairness of the laws again, right? If I kill a white man and a white man kills a Black man, we're not going to get the same number of years in jail. That's just not going to happen. But the laws say we should. But the realities of what happened is not that. And some of that is some of the, legislative inequalities. And, those are just, many, many, many trumped up years. But for whatever reason, this group of young people, I'll call them, I see them so on fire for fairness that I just don't see it going away unless there's major changes. And this is just outside the church, but I'm so blown away that they're so on fire for equality and change and fairness. And there's been a lot of people trying to do that over the years. I just haven't seen it this powerful. The ones that are doing it the right way, not the ones that are looting and trying to use, an agency. I heard someone send me a Facebook sheet that showed, hey, this protesting group is going out at 2:00. So at 7, we're going to have this group go out and do some looting right after them. And I'm like, wow. So they actually have a formalized group that's riding on the coattails of good protesters and then looting right behind them because they know it causes chaos and whatever else. It's just disgusting to me.
Yeah. And I think too, from the Christian perspective, what I was trying to get at, and I think you hit it well, is okay. So someone does something that we don't agree with, like kneels during an anthem, and I become outraged, and I immediately label that person as they hate our country, they're unpatriotic, as opposed to saying, okay, as Jim was saying, okay, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Now, I don't have to, that doesn't mean I say I think it's okay to do that.
That's right.
But why do I automatically, as a person, want to, I just think it's not very Christian of me to take people and label them something and then put them in this box and then treat them differently because of that. Because if we close the doors on all, I feel like we've surrounded ourselves with people that we agree with. We get on social media, and if we don't like what people are saying, we unfollow them, we unfriend them. So we just have a bunch of people around us that think the same way we do. And if we do that with people who aren't following Christ, how in the world are we ever going to get them to come to Christ? Because we've put them in categories and pushed them away from us. And I just think if someone's offended by it, Jesus talks, I think it's Jesus. I'm sorry that I don't know the exact reference here, but the verse that talks about, the weaker brother, finding someone that, if we believe someone's wrong, then in our mind, they're the weaker brother. We don't want to treat them differently, but we should be caring for them more, not less. We should be loving them more, not less. And
Yeah.
so that's,
Nate,
I don't know.
Nate, let me give you a story that it should touch home with you in a way that it resonates with you for a while. So we were in Arizona. Um, my daughter is on a softball team that is, they're one of the top in the country, and they they just have to go play softball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we drive from Southern California, 6-7 hour drive to go play softball in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And Arizona at the time, we were in kind of a more of a remote area, Prescott, where the numbers are very low, and so it was safer and everything. And my wife, she decided to take the kids out for breakfast. She's like, we haven't been in a restaurant eating inside for 4 months.
Right.
So like the night before, they were just jazzed to just go to a restaurant for breakfast. And so they found this restaurant that was just nearby. They were like, I said, breakfast or something. So they just went by. Now they walked in, and the waitress said, okay, we'll get you seated. They sat them down. And my wife said she looked around, and the entire place was packed with men and women that were at least 70 years old or older, 100% white people in the entire place. Mm-hmm. Now, my kids are black. My wife decided, because she just couldn't go anymore without getting her hair done, to get braids. So she has braids in there in her hair. The kids were in there in their, workout stuff. They look like, they could be whoever knows. Now, what happened that day was this. There were two couples there that were literally, one couple got up, moved to another place in the restaurant, right? They were sitting arm's distance, moved to another place in the restaurant, closer to other people. They were a little bit further away. Another couple who were sitting catty corner were just looking and talking to each other, Now, my kids are fairly clueless because we live in a 90% white area anyways. But my youngest daughter was like, why are these people looking at us like this? Like we may rob them or steal. Like they have this nervous, concerning look. And so you have to meet my wife one day to understand what she chose to do. But she's the most Christian woman that I know that's breathing. And so what she did was she told the waitress to come over. She said, you see this couple here and this other couple that just walked away? No matter what it is, I want to pay for their bill. I don't care what it is. And please don't tell them, but when they're done, they're wrapping up, here's a check, pay for their meal. And she's like, this is right when we sat down. So we hadn't even ordered yet. And the first couple got up to leave, and we're kind of looking around. You can tell they were kind of trying to figure out who paid for our meal. They went to one table, 5, 6, 7 tables, and kind of reluctantly came over to our table and said, did you guys pay for our meal? And my wife says, one of my kids, they're known to do crazy stuff like that. They may have done that out of love. And the wife just paused, and she started crying. Crying. And she said, this has changed my life. I will never look at people and make the judgment calls that I have in my head. And can I give you a hug? And she gave my wife a hug, and then they left. Wow. And people kind of saw that, but the other people who had moved away didn't see it. And so same thing happened. They were trying to find who paid for it, and came over to the table, and my wife said, yep, my kids, they do stuff like that, and they just were so appreciative and so supportive, and they become more open. The point is is when we give people a chance to demonstrate love to us and from us, and approach people and not think that's a homeless person, or we prejudge or we pre-put them into this category, Pastor, right, as you're saying, then I think it would allow us to be more open and free to be ourselves, because we know that our hearts are filled in more of a Christ-like way, in a loving way. And we don't fear that we might do or say something because we're struggling in our own hearts. So that example is just to say, the love that was shown that day, I think, will magnify and multiply over years. If you think about who was in there, right? People, what they
Yeah.
saw, their perception now in some cases, what they might go teach their kids that's different. All that are the types of things I think as a church and as people we need to do more of. It's not the paying for part of it, but just the outward demonstration of love and caring and really wanting to, have a conversation or relationship with someone. Think of waiting in a waiting room at a restaurant. Do you go, hey, how was your day, man? And how are you? Or is it not approachable? I don't know. We deal with all those kind of emotions. So I thought I'd just share that real example that happened a couple weeks ago.
That's so good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think we have to, it's when you're at the gym and you see people, and it's not just someone that's black or someone that's white or someone, you just see people and you're just, you care. I have this friend, we went to India together a few years ago, and this guy would talk to anybody. And so we're in the airport, and I won't tell any stories, but I'm just telling you, because he was willing to reach out and just talk to people, we got more opportunities to share the gospel. We got more opportunities to meet people's needs. Mm-hmm. And just, I mean, again, we have to get back, as we've been talking about, we have to get back to where we're not assuming somebody because they dress this way, because their hair is this color, because of this, because of that, because they're young, because they're millennial, because they're old, whatever it is, we stop doing that. And then we've been called to love. We talked last week a little bit about, and we won't go here again, but we talked a little bit about, getting to that place where then even people that have hurt you, even people that have done horrible things to you, learning to love our enemies. I mean, I think, but we got to start where you're talking about, Martel. So
and that's a bigger hurdle.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because that's a tough one. But loving people that's never done anything to us or never done anything wrong. It's just another human being. Yep. That just seems so much easier. And I try to teach my kids. I tell them, I said, change the minds and hearts of people. And I show them, if we're at a hotel, and there was a probably not an elderly in their 60s couple. We were at the elevator first, and I moved my kids to the side, and I asked them to get on first. And they were like, "Oh my goodness, wow, thank you." And then they went up because I didn't, it's COVID time. I didn't want to go with them. I said, no, you guys have the elevator. Go ahead. No, but you guys were waiting. No, you just go right ahead. And I moved the kids to the side. And when they went up, I told the kids, I said, change the minds and hearts of people, one person at a time. Yeah. That couple will think differently in some kind of way, potentially, of other people, maybe even other black people. And so I think we need to do more of that as a group, in group settings, as a church, for sure, as individuals, absolutely. So, yeah. This is good.
That's good. Yeah, that's what we as a church, when I mentioned the church earlier, that's kind of been our response, is to call individuals to do what you're talking about, rather than the church making this official stand position, all of this.
Yeah.
And we've had people that have not liked the fact that we haven't made these huge, public stands. Because I believe, I shared this with the guys last week, I believe it's going to be the church that continues this conversation whenever the world decides it's not trending anymore.
Right.
It's going to be Christians who say, no, we're going to continue to listen. We're going to continue to understand. We're going to continue to educate ourselves. We're going to continue to love people the way Jesus loves us. And because I think that's the only lasting thing. So,
yeah.
Jim, you're Bob or Jake, have anything you want to say or ask?
No,
No, that was really good. I really, just that idea of changing hearts and minds one person at a time. I think that's something that's really gonna, I think, stick with me, of just not minimizing the importance of the interaction with another human being at something as small as an elevator. So, I mean, that's a great word. And I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
my thought process right now is that, and I don't want to sound like I'm negative, but if we as Christians are doing that, but then some of us are not getting involved and not doing those things, what do we think heaven's going to be like?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, everyone won't be there. I'll tell you that much. I don't think everyone's going to be there. And a lot of this is, at the end of the day, we will all be judged, as it says in Revelations. We won't get there on our good deeds, and we'll all be judged. And so, what we try to do, in our neighborhood, on our sports teams, because I think people watch, they see what you do and who you are, they know what you and Patty stand for, right? You guys don't deviate from that. You don't ask for favors. You don't ask for anything. But guess what? You have built a legacy of young women who have married and gone off and had families, who have foundationally appreciated what you've taught them. And if you were to capture how that has multiplied, you couldn't even feel the whole. I mean, you overfill the whole softball field of people that have been impacted. That's massive. And I think we shouldn't take that for granted. And I guess my uber point there is we gotta understand that someone standing on the street that you don't know, you can always impact for Christ. Someone who has a negative disposition, you can impact for Christ. And we got to take pride in doing that, in a sincere desire to do that through training, teaching, listening, coaching. All those things come into play, in my opinion. And we have to just believe that we're making a difference, and we have the freedom of choice. And so, through all our good efforts, that's why there's a heaven and a hell, unfortunately. And we have to do all that we can humanly possibly do to feel like we haven't left anyone behind. And that's my personal stance, is that I try, and I fail often because I don't touch as many people as I know I can, but I try to touch many people and not hit them over the head with Christ, but meet them where they are, whether it's a youth or teenager I've coached, or an adult, or a teammate, or someone I went to school with maybe, and try and meet them where they are, and at least allow them to truly understand that Christ loves them. He will forgive you of your sins. And, he wants you to spend eternity with him. And, but we all have that choice, unfortunately, to walk away from that. And so I'd encourage you, Jim and Pastor, to keep using your platform. Jake, I'm not sure what you do, but you guys have a great platform, and the love and care, tenderness, the genuineness, authenticity, all those things come into play when you're on somewhat of a pedestal where people see you at a higher light or a higher expectation, and you have that ability to influence, what they do and how they are. And so I think, encourage you guys to continue to do that.
Yeah. I mean, and isn't that what privilege is? I mean, privilege is taking the privilege we have, whether it's American, white, whatever, these guys being sports guys, you know, and using that to elevate other people and point them
That's
towards
right.
Christ, you know.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
we don't
Yeah.
apologize for it. We take advantage of it and use it to lift other people up. So,
That's right. That's right.
yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, do you have anything else, or think we're
No, I appreciate the time. You know, this was kind of a last minute, but I'm super excited I was able to join. If you guys ever have any questions or want me to join anything like this, I'm all for it as much as I can possibly do it.
Awesome. See you in 2 weeks.
Yes. See you in a couple weeks, buddy.
hey?
All right, guys.
So,
Take care.
all right, thanks, man.
Oh, you guys pray to lead it off,
Yeah,
or?
we're gonna pray. I just wanna, to anyone who's out there listening, Martell's already told you an incredible story about Christ, and you have a choice that you can make. And maybe you're someone who, whether it's because of your race or because of something else, you have felt like you were nobody. Someone made you feel less than, and I want you to know that because you were created by God, and because He was willing to send His Son to die for you, you're more than worth something. And but you do, just like Martell said, we all have a choice to make. That choice is, what will we do with Jesus? And one day, I think Jim was alluding to this. One day we're all going to be in heaven together. Of race, I mean, we're not all, but all those who have a relationship with Christ are going to be in heaven together. Of all races, of all nations, of all everything, are going to be coming together. But it's going to be the people, when we stand before God, it's going to be the people who ask Jesus into their heart. And so we want to give you that opportunity tonight to do that. And so if you're out there, you've heard something that you are interested in, something about Jesus, just He's talking to you right now. We want to invite you. I'm going to pray, and we want to ask you to pray as well, and to make that choice, that you will let Jesus come into your life. You'll let what He did on the cross count for you, so that you'll no longer be separated from Him because of your sin, but you can come together with Him. And so let's pray, and I want to invite you into that relationship with Him. Father God, we're so thankful to you for how much you love us. We're thankful that you see every bit of us. You see the outside. You see every bit of the inner workings of the inside of who we are. You see our hearts. You know who we are. And God, yet you still love us. You didn't put us in a category and write us off, but you loved us, and you sent your Son Jesus to die for us. And because we had evil in our heart, and because we were sinners, we've been separated from you. But God, because you sent your Son Jesus to die, we can now be reunified with you. We can now have a relationship with you, but it only comes to that relationship with Jesus Christ. And so God, if there's anyone out here tonight that wants that relationship, I pray that they'll tell you right now, God, I'm a sinner. I have messed up. I've done things that were not what you wanted me to do. But God, I know I can't earn my way. I can't earn my way to you. But you came and you earned it for me by dying on the cross, by paying the penalty for my sin. So now, God, I just ask you to come into my heart. And I ask that you will just live in me, and that you'll save me from my sin, and you will be my Lord. You will be my master. You will be the one that I follow every day. And it will affect the way that I treat people. And I'll just see people in my life, and I'll love them with the love that you have for me. God, I just pray that if anyone tonight has prayed that prayer, Lord, that they will they'll feel a transformation in their life. They'll get connected to other people who know you. And God, that they will begin to live their life, changing the world, sharing the gospel, making disciples who make disciples. God, we love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Well, on behalf of Champions Within, I thank you for listening tonight and for engaging with us. If you want to know more about Champions Within and the organization, you can go to the website, championswithin.org. if you prayed that prayer, or you just have questions, or you just want to talk to somebody about faith, send an email to help@championswithin.org, and someone will reach out to you and respond, and you guys can begin that conversation with Champions Within. Thank you tonight for being here, and we're so glad you're here, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye, you guys. Bye, Jake.